Very good evening, class. I hope you all must be well and safe. So, today our agenda of discussion is more on SQL, and in this particular chapter, in this particular topic, we are going to cover up all these commands, that is more SQL commands and their uses, as we have already worked with multiple SQL commands. If you remember, we have done with various DDL, DML and DCL commands, and in DDL command we have worked with various data definition language command, like we have created database, we have created table, and we have worked on it. Now talking about your DML commands, you have done manipulation in the existing data, so we have done with various DML commands as well. Now today our core agenda of discussion is we are going to discuss upon aggregate functions. We are and all aggregate functions which are available there with us. These are average, count, max, min and sum function. So we'll be discussing on these functions, like average functions, as you can see, your count function, your max function, your min function, your sum function, and we are going to do an exclusive use of distinct and all clause. Later on we'll be discussing group by and order by clause, and then thereafter we'll be working on having clause. Okay, so for all this sort of things, I am going to work on my SQL Server engine, and in which I have already created one database named as SQL _ case studies _ basic. So you need not to get confused on both the platform, that on which platform is more good and on which platform you can work upon. Both the platforms are quite common and you can work on both the platforms, and these both the platforms are having their own exclusive feature. And these commands which I am going to write, SQL query is common for all. So it doesn't matter whether you are writing query on MySQL or you are writing query on MySQL server, or you are writing query on SQL server. It hardly matters. It hardly make a difference. A slight difference will come. That is not at all a big, right? So let's start with the tutorial and what we are going to do. Before going ahead, first of all, I have just used my database which I have already created, that is use SQL case studies basic, right? So this is the database which was existing here in my, as you can see in the table. So I am just writing the command just to use this database, and while I am just going to execute this command, so on execution what will happen, that command completed successfully, then it's up to me. Now thereafter, after using this database, I can access all the tables available inside this particular database, and those tables are your customer, product category information and your transaction table. Okay, so I would like to show you all the tables which are available there with me. Let's see these tables. Okay, so after writing this, I'm going to start with your let's see the customer table. So select, I'm writing the command select asterisk from customer. As you can see, customer is already coming. You are already suggesting customer. So I'll be selecting this table and running my command. Okay, so let's run the command, and after running this command, what will I get? I can see my customer table, which is having how many entries? As you can see that this table is having 5, 6, 4, 7 rows. So here you can see my customer table as a result, that this customer table is having what? The customer ID, date of birth, the gender and the city. So this particular column is representing the city code. This particular column is representing the gender. This particular column is representing the date of birth, and this particular column is representing the customer ID, right? Let's say if I want to see my other table which is existing So what I need to do, I'm just copying the query from here. So Control C, and thereafter I'm just pasting the same query and changing the table name, that is product category info. So this is my another table, and while I am going to execute it, as you can see, the table is coming as a result. So while I am going to execute this particular query, so it will result me another table by the name product category info, which is having various product category code, as you can see in the result, various product category code and having your product category. Then thereafter it is further comprises of your product subcategory, and what are available, what are the choices available in product, various product subcategory. So I have made this table as well, and then thereafter there is another table, the last table. If you want to see that table, I'm again copying the query which I have copied earlier. So let's see another table which is available there with me, that is the transaction table. And while I am going to run it, so you can see after on execution of this, it is showing me the result of this transaction table, what all transaction are done. So in this I am having various fields named as your transaction ID, your customer ID, your transaction date, your product subcategory code, right? I mean product category code, your quantity, your rate, your text, your amount, and your store type. So my core agenda of this entire lecture will be based on this particular table, and we are going to work on these three tables, and we are going to see what all commands I can use right out of it, and just to extract the result. So I hope you must understand what all we have to do over here. Is that clear to you all? Okay, now shall I move ahead? Right. Okay. So before moving ahead, I would like to use this particular this particular text box, and just to show you that what all things we are going to discuss. So as you can see, we are going to work on these tables. So let's move ahead, right? So okay, fine. Now let's come to aggregate functions. What are aggregate functions? What all aggregate functions are available there with us, and I would like to implement this particular these particular functions on a table which are having lesser number of records. So if I am going to execute this particular query, as you can see, it is this query, this table is having 5, 6, 4, 7 records. And while it comes to your product category info, so let's execute it. And while I'm going to execute it, you can see this particular table is having 23 rows, so which are quite less. So we'll be working on this, right? So aggregate functions, what are aggregate functions? Now let's discuss about the word aggregation. As the word aggregation shows, we are going to extract some result out of my table by doing aggregation. Like we are going to achieve some conclusive result, right, out of my table, and how I am going to extract it with the help of SQL query. With the help of SQL query, by by using the extensive feature that is called your aggregate functions, right? So let's start. Say suppose very first aggregate function which we are going to discuss, the average function, right? So just to find out the average, so I am going to use average function over here. Now how can I calculate the average of a product subcategory code? I know that it's not good to calculate the average of this product subcategory code, but because this is further a subcategory code, this is further a subcategory of a category. So if I am going to calculate average, so this doesn't make any sense, right? So let's go to the table transaction, and I am going to execute this table transaction. Let's execute it. And in this transaction table, as you can see, we are having various fields named as your rate, your tax, and your total amount. So let's calculate the average of this particular total amount, right, out of this table. So what we are going to do, let me calculate the total average. So just to calculate total average, what I can do, first total average. So just to calculate total average, what I can do, that select and what, select star, or not star, actually I have to calculate average. So just to calculate average, we are having one exclusive function named as average, avg, of which particular field, total total underscore amt of from average total amount as total your mean value from which table? It is there in the transaction table, transaction. And while I am going to execute this particular query, this will give me a result as it is showing me an error, just because that operand data type is considered as varchar, and you cannot calculate the average of a variable character value, right? You have to have an integer value, right? This is quite essential while you are going to calculate average. So for this, what I can do, I can just cast this particular data value. So let's cast it just to remove this error, and for this what I can do casting, and just to cast it, I am having one great feature in this, that in SQL, that is cast, CAST. This is just to convert, cast total amount as decimal, and in decimal I'm just going to pass my precision, that is 9,2. This is like what I have passed. I passed it at is like first what I have done, I have converted this total amount field, which was then varchar, as decimal, and the size I have passed as 9,2, and thereafter I am calculating the average. So it will not give me any error. So right after running this query, or I can write what 5,2, or it's totally up to you, or you can write int, whatever you wish to write you can write. So I'm writing like int, right? So I've used int as mean value from transactions. So while I'm running this query, so let's execute it, and it is from transactions as mean value from transactions. So most probably one bracket is not closed over here. Now bracket is closed. Now query is okay, as you can see. So let's run the query, and while I'm running the query, it is giving me the right result. Just execute it. So as it is showing me that the value is quite large, so better to convert it into decimal. So convert decimal and just pass on the value, that is 9,2. Because the result is coming in decimal, so I have just passed on the precision and then executing the query. So let's execute it. After executing the query, as you can see, it is coming, the result is coming as 2107.3092323. Why the result was not coming earlier? Because I have mentioned over here 5, right? Out of 5, what have I done? I have reserved 2 places for the decimal value. So only 3 places will remain for the whole number value, right? While you will be running that query, this value cannot be, this particular value cannot be adjusted into 3 whole number places, because as you can see in the result it is showing us 2107. So 2107 can never come in 3 spaces, so we'll be needing more spaces. That's why I have to pass something more than that, like 6 comma 2. Then this query will be running perfectly and giving me the exact result or the desired result, right? So while I'm running this query, so it is perfectly running, and if you are going to reduce the space, what will happen? It will not get run, and it will throw and it will show an error, right? So it's like this, F5, and while I'm arithmetic overflow, as you can see, the error is coming as arithmetic overflow error, converting varchar to data type numeric. Yeah, conversion can be done, but data is getting overflow. You are having your data, the result which is coming out, it is more in size in comparison of the reserve space which you have occupied to store your result. Okay, so that's why we need to take more space just to store that result. Okay, so today you must learn 2 things over here, that mathematical aggregate functions cannot be implemented on what? These functions cannot be implemented on your character or varchar type value. Of course it will not work upon character and varchar type value, right? So you need to have a numeric data type just to implement these functions. Okay, for example, instead of average, if you want to, so we have complete with this average function, and as we have calculated the average by using this particular query, if there is no casting, there is no requirement of casting, then we can directly pass on the field name as we have passed over here. Like as we have passed our field name, like your total amount. So your total amount is that particular field on which we can work. So let's go ahead. Now next aggregate function which we have to discuss, that is count function. So count function is used to count total number of entries there in your statement. So let's move to your count function. So while we come to the count function, let's go to the count function. So just to use count function will return us total counting. So to what we have to discuss, that is count function, function, count function. Okay, so the purpose of using count function will return us total counted values. So let's discuss about total counted values, that is select. I just wanted to count how many records are there in my transaction table. So for this, first of all, let's check your transaction table. Let's execute it, and I want to count all the records available there in the transaction table. So select count, and what to count? Just pass on the field name and not a particular field. If you don't want to count a particular field value, then just simply write asterisk, select count asterisk, and where asterisk means all, this asterisk symbol denotes all. So select count asterisk from transaction, SACTION, transaction. So if I am going to execute this query, this will return me the total how many records are there in this transaction table. So this transaction table is having 23,053 records. So it is showing me as a result. If I want to count a particular value So just to, for example, I want to count, let's first execute this customer table. So we'll be having more option. So let's execute it. See, this is our customer table, and if I want to count distinct records in this customer table with respect to city code, as you can see, this customer ID belongs to city code 4, this customer ID belongs to city code 10, and likewise. So if I want to count only those records whose city code is 10, so my third task is to count those records in those records whose city code is what? 10. So how can I count? So my query will be select, very good, CLECT, select, count, and what to count? Your city code, city underscore your field name, and your select count your city underscore code. So the field name should be correct, IT city underscore code, right, from what? From your this customer table. Select count city code from customer table where what? City code is equals to 10. Now while I am going to execute this query will give me result as 558. That means total count of city code whose city code is 10 are 558 out of your approximately 25,000 records, as you must have seen, right? So as if I want to, as you can see, no column name is coming over here, and I want to apply any column name, so I can create alias of this particular virtual field which is created by my SQL engine. So as total city code, so let's execute this query. And see the result. So it is now showing total city code equals to 558, right? So likewise, similarly, you can check how many city codes are there. You can count distinct city code as well. So to count, our fourth task is to count distinct city code. So just to count distinct city code, what does distinct means? Distinct means unique entries. So to count distinct city code, what query is to be right? That is select, and what? Count. And in count, I'll be using another function named as distinct. And what distinct? What distinct? Distinct word means unique. What unique I want to count? City code. Distinct city underscore code. Okay. And then from your table name, that is your customer. while you'll be running this query, you'll be getting how many distinct city code are used in this table. So total 11 distinct city codes are used in this table, right? So if I want to check all these city codes as well, so I have to write city underscore code comma count distinct city code. Likewise, it will tell me that how many entries are there of each city code. So like city code, okay, city code, and from customer group by, I have to do grouping as well. Group by what? City code. City code. Now it will give me the exact result what I want. This query will give me the exact result. After executing, you can see total entries which don't have any city code are 1. Entries which are having 1 as a city code, like these total entries are 1, and likewise, so it is going up to 9. Okay, so as far as all entries are concerned, so you can do tweaking in that. So it is just giving me by counting, like it is counting me the city codes, and corresponding to it, it is giving me the entry. So for this I need to remove distinct, because I want to count that how many city codes, for each city codes how many entries are there. So let's execute this query, and while I'll be executing this query, so it will result me as, let's execute it. So it is showing me that for 2 there are 564 entries, for city code 3 there are 595 entries, for city code 6 there are 526 entries, and likewise so on. Okay. So if you are going to calculate the sum of these counts, then you should get total number of rows available in your table. So while I am going to execute this query, it is giving me the result. So let's calculate. It is just giving me the count, and it is giving me that how many entries are there for each city code. For city code 2, this particular table is having 564 entries. For city code 3, there are total 595 entries. For city code 6, likewise, it is showing me how many entries are there. So you have done with your distinct keyword also, that how to count distinct cities. That time it was showing 1 for each. It was counting 1 for each city code. Why? Because we have used distinct keyword, and distinct keyword always count unique values. It never count the redundant values. If you are going to write all in place of distinct, like count all, then it will give me the same result. Let's execute the query and understand the difference. So after executing the query, it is showing me the right result, that is 564. For 2 city code 2, there are 564 rows. For city code 3, there are total 595 entries. For city code 6, there are 526. For 4, 582. For 5, only 2 entries. but there's no city code allotted to these two rows. For this record 10, there are total 585, right? Likewise, so we are done with count, I suppose. Then thereafter we have to do we have discussed distinct and all as well. We have to count max and min. So out of this, if I want to extract maximum value, like what is the maximum count in my customer table for a particular city code? Yeah. So for this, what I can do is just to calculate max, and if I am going to run this query, most probably, let's see whether it will result me. Yeah, because see, two aggregate functions can never be combined, cannot perform an aggregate function on an expression containing an aggregate function. But if you further want to calculate it, you have to use subquery concept, which is no point of discussion for you people. So if I want to calculate maximum, then maximum count can also be done, but first of all I have to move to the next. So for 5 we have to deal with max function. For this I am going to use my transaction table. So let's go to the transaction table and see what all values are there. So I want to find out that what is the maximum amount we have achieved by doing the transaction. So let's go to it. So for this I'm writing select max, and what is to be there in max? The total amount from transactions. If I am going to run this query will result me 998.92. This is the maximum amount transaction which is done so far, and out of it, if I want to calculate minimum amount, what minimum transaction is done, so simple, I have to use min function. So for this we can do select min, and I want to calculate, I want to compute this on total amount as well. Total underscore amount, and your from transaction, the table, transactions table. So let's run it and see the result, F5. So the minimum transaction which is done, the minimum amount transaction which is done so far is 100.555. It is showing as a result. Okay. So you are done with sum, you are done with count, you are done with min, you are done with max. I suppose all the functions, some function is left. So as you understand, the name gives you the right meaning. So let's move ahead. The sum function 7. Sum function. In my transaction table, I want to calculate the total amount which I have received so far after all the transaction. So how can I calculate sum? So select sum of total amount from transaction, and this query will throw me an error. Why this query will throw me an error? Because the data type problem is there. Because the data type of total amount field is still varchar. So for this I need to cast it, that is cast what? Total amount as, and decimal, you need to take a large decimal which can store the value. So I'm taking 10, and out of this I'm giving I'm reserving 2 places for the decimal part. So let me complete the bracket. If your bracket is not completed, then that means your query will not run. So you have to do very good take care of this. So let's execute it. While you are going to execute it, it is giving you the total sum of the amount, which is there in your transaction. So let's move ahead to a transaction table and see that what all amount is there in your transaction table. So here's your transaction table and see the amount. So this is showing you the result of all 23,553 records, right? So here we are done with our aggregate functions. We have done with the sum function, we have done with min function just to calculate minimum values, maximum function to calculate maximum values, to count distinct like unique entry just to remove redundancy from a particular field or from a particular table. We can use distinct keyword. Distinct keyword means it will count only the unique values, right? Then thereafter, if I'm going to talk about this this particular count function with the various logical type of queries, so we can use it over here. Now talking about this simple count we have done, if we have to count all the rows there in the table, so we can use count asterisk, where asterisk means all, as you are already aware of asterisk, right? Because we used to write select star from table. So asterisk is quite common. And talking about this average function, so by using this average function we can calculate the mean value of total amount field, what we have done. And in this particular lecture we have used our table customer table, product category info table, and transactions table, right? So far so good. So let's wind up today's session over here. And I'm sorry I have put a few more points, group by and order by, but I didn't discuss these 2 points in detail. But in a very next lecture we will be discussing these 2 topics very much in detail. Thank you so much. I'd like to tell you to practice these queries by taking an example table and try to just extract the right result, right? Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead. Bye bye.